Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Where I work, we get a lot of families since we're right next to the food court, and most of the time, parents keep their kids close. I was working the afternoon shift alone covering the register while my co-worker was on break. A woman came in with what looked like a return and some items she wanted to purchase. She seemed normal enough, maybe in her 30s, dressed in yoga pants and carrying one of those oversized tote bags. Her daughter was with her, probably around 5 or 6 years old, with pigtails and a bright pink jacket. The kid was well behaved at first, just wandering around near the jewelry display while her mom and I handled the transaction. I noticed the little girl had picked up one of our bracelet sets. It was nothing fancy, just some colorful beaded bracelets we sell for about $15. She was turning it over in her hands, examining each bead like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. I processed the return without any issues. The woman had her receipt and everything was in good condition. Then she picked out a couple of tops from our clearance rack. A standard transaction, nothing complicated. When I was bagging her items, the woman told her daughter it was time to give the bracelet back to me so they could leave. The little girl looked disappointed but actually handed it over to me without much fuss. I thanked the kid and smiled, setting the bracelet back on the display. They headed toward the door and I was already thinking about restocking some items when I heard footsteps running back into the store. The little girl had broken away from her mom and come racing back to the jewelry section. She was looking around frantically, clearly searching for that same bracelet set. The woman called after her daughter, saying they needed to go meet daddy for lunch and reminding her they had talked about this already. But the kid wasn't listening. She started getting more agitated, her voice getting higher and more desperate as she cried about wanting the pretty bracelet and asking where it went. The tears started. Not just regular crying, but that specific sound that only small children can make when they're truly devastated about something. The woman came back into the store looking stressed, but not particularly concerned about controlling the situation. She tried talking to her daughter about how they couldn't buy everything they wanted, and reminded her about using her words. The little girl completely ignored her mom and suddenly darted behind the counter where I was standing. This area is strictly for employees only, and we keep all sorts of supplies back there that customers definitely shouldn't be handling. I watched as this kid started going through my stuff. She was pulling at bags, moving clothes around, clearly still hunting for that bracelet. We keep security tag pins back there, scissors, staplers, all kinds of things that could hurt a small child. I told the woman that if she wanted to come back and grab her daughter, that would be totally fine. I was trying to be diplomatic about it, giving the mom an easy way to handle the situation without making anyone look bad. But she just stood there on the other side of the counter with this exhausted expression. The woman told me that her daughter would just work through it. Work through it? The kid was now actively going through my personal belongings and getting dangerously close to sharp objects. I had other customers starting to line up and this situation was completely out of hand. The little girl seemed to realize her mom was trying to get her to leave because she suddenly bolted toward the back corner of the employee area, clearly trying to hide. I couldn't let her get back there where we keep even more dangerous equipment. I stuck my arm out to block her path, not grabbing or pushing, just creating a barrier. I barely made contact with her shoulder. You would have thought I'd physically assaulted this child. She let out the most ear-piercing scream I've ever heard. The kind of sound that makes every person in a 3-store radius stop what they're doing and look around for the source of the emergency. The woman's expression immediately changed. Instead of looking embarrassed about her daughter's behavior, she was now staring directly at me. She said that what just happened was embarrassing, like somehow I was the problem in this whole situation. Embarrassing? I was the one who should be embarrassed. Her kid had just spent 10 minutes terrorizing my workplace while she stood there doing absolutely nothing, and somehow I was the problem. But it got worse. The little girl ran back out into the main store area and threw herself on the floor right in the middle of everything, having a complete meltdown. She was kicking and screaming and carrying on like someone had told her Christmas was cancelled. And her mom? Still just standing there watching, like this was some kind of nature documentary. I had customers waiting to check out, a child having a nuclear meltdown on my floor, and a mother who seemed to think the best parenting strategy was to just wait it out. I've never wanted a manager on duty more in my entire life. The screaming went on for what felt like forever, but was probably only about 5 minutes. Other shoppers were starting to complain, and I could see mall security walking by, probably wondering if they needed to get involved. The woman seemed to decide she'd had enough. She told her daughter they were leaving and asked her to say goodbye to me. The kid was still sobbing but managed to get herself off the floor. They left without another word, leaving me to deal with the aftermath and a line of very uncomfortable customers. I spent the rest of my shift worrying about what might happen next. Would she call corporate, file some kind of complaint? In retail, the customer is always right, even when they're completely wrong. I had to write up a detailed incident report for my district manager explaining exactly what happened and why I felt the need to intervene. I tried to be as factual as possible, but I could tell from his response that he wasn't thrilled about the situation. The next day, I got called into the back office. My district manager explained that while he understood why I did what I did, employees can't make physical contact with customers' children under any circumstances. He said that next time I needed to call mall security or ask another customer for help. I asked him if that meant I was supposed to just let a kid hurt themselves with sharp objects. He told me I should remove the dangerous items, not touch the child. I got a formal warning in my file and had to sign some additional paperwork about appropriate customer interactions. Meanwhile, the woman who let her kid run wild in my store faced absolutely no punishment for any of it. The whole thing still makes my blood boil when I think about it. I was trying to keep her child safe, maintain order in my workplace, and provide decent service to my other customers, and somehow I ended up being the bad guy in the situation. I graduated from the University of Toronto Mississauga campus with a degree in business and worked hard to land my first job as a business analyst at a tech startup. My husband and I met during our final year of university, and we've been together for 6 years now. We have a 2-year-old daughter who keeps us both busy. My husband comes from a close-knit family. His parents live about an hour away from us, and we try to visit them at least twice a month. His sister lives even closer to his parents and visits them almost every weekend with her husband and 2 kids. She graduated from university around the same time I did, but she chose to become a stay-at-home mom after her first child was born. There's nothing wrong with that choice, but she sometimes makes comments that suggest she thinks her path is somehow superior to mine. Last night was one of our regular family dinners at my in-laws' house. The whole family was there, including my sister-in-law, her husband, and their kids. My daughter was playing with her cousins in the living room while the adults sat around the dining table after finishing dinner. The conversation was flowing naturally from topic to topic when someone brought up my husband's cousin's son who had just started his first year at university. My mother-in-law mentioned how proud she was of him for getting into such a good school. My father-in-law nodded and agreed that going to a prestigious university really helps with making connections for future career opportunities. I told them I completely agreed because I had experienced this firsthand. I shared the story of how I got my first business analyst job because the person interviewing me had also gone to University of Toronto. I explained that we ended up talking about our shared experiences on campus for half the interview, which really helped me connect with the hiring manager. Everyone seemed interested in my story, and my husband smiled at me proudly. But then my sister-in-law jumped into the conversation with a comment that made my stomach drop. She asked me in a dismissive tone if I meant University of Toronto Mississauga, then added with a smug smile that it wasn't the actual one. The way she said it was so condescending, like she had just delivered some kind of clever burn. The room went quiet for a moment, and my husband looked uncomfortable. My husband tried to smooth things over by politely telling her that all the University of Toronto campuses are part of the same university system. She just shrugged like she didn't really believe him or care about his explanation. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment and anger. I knew I should probably just let it go, but something about her attitude really got under my skin. I asked her where she went to university. She proudly announced that she had gone to University of Toronto at the St. George campus. She said it with such emphasis and pride, like she was announcing she had won some kind of competition. I could feel everyone at the table getting tense. My mother-in-law was looking down at her hands, and my father-in-law was clearing his throat awkwardly. I don't know what came over me in that moment. Maybe it was the wine we'd had with dinner, or maybe I was just tired of her constant subtle put-downs over the years. Before I could stop myself, I asked her how she was using her degree now. The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. I knew exactly what I was implying, and so did everyone else at the table. Karen's face went red, and she looked like I had just slapped her. She told me in a tight and controlled voice that she had chosen to be a stay-at-home mom. She stopped talking to me completely after that and spent the rest of the evening pointedly ignoring me while chatting with everyone else at the table. The atmosphere became so uncomfortable that we ended up leaving earlier than usual. On the drive home, my husband was quiet for the first few minutes. Our daughter had fallen asleep in her car seat, so we were talking in whispers. He told me that what I said to his sister was harsh. I reminded him that she started it with that comment about my university not being the actual one, which was incredibly rude. He acknowledged that her comment was tactless, but said he didn't think she meant it maliciously. He pointed out that I had basically attacked her life choices. I argued that she had attacked mine first, and that the whole premise of what she said was wrong and insulting. He said he understood that I was offended, but that two wrongs don't make a right. We went back and forth about it for the rest of the drive home. He kept saying that while her comment was inappropriate, my response was out of line and deliberately hurtful. I argued that she deserved to be called out for her snobbery and elitism. This morning, my husband's phone started buzzing with text messages from his sister. Apparently, she had spent the night stewing over what happened and wanted to make sure he knew how completely inappropriate and out of line she thought I was. She went on and on about how hurt and offended she felt by my comment. My husband showed me some of the messages, and they were dramatic. She was acting like I had committed some unforgivable sin by questioning her about her degree. In her texts, she conveniently forgot to mention her own rude comment that started the whole thing. My husband told me that she wanted me to apologize to her. I said I wasn't apologizing to someone who insulted my education and then played the victim when I called her out on it. He said he had told her it was a misunderstanding between everyone and that we should all just let it go and move on. But I could tell from his tone that he still thought I was more in the wrong than she was. He's always been protective of his family, sometimes to a fault. I love that about him usually, but in this case, it's frustrating that he can't see how his sister's comment was the real problem. The more I think about it, the more convinced I am that I was right to stand up for myself. Karen has always had this superiority complex about her education and background. She's made little comments over the years about how certain universities or programs are more legitimate than others. Last night was just the final straw. I worked just as hard for my degree as she did for hers. The fact that I went to a satellite campus doesn't make my education any less valuable or legitimate. And at least I'm actually using my degree in my career instead of just using it as a conversation piece to make other people feel bad about themselves. The whole situation has made me realize how entitled she really is. She thinks she can make snide comments about other people's accomplishments, but the moment someone questions her choices, she runs crying to her brother about how unfairly she's being treated. She expects everyone to just accept her put-downs and criticism without any pushback. What really bothers me is how she's trying to make herself the victim in this situation. She started the conflict with her rude and elitist comment, but now she's acting like I'm the one who was completely out of line. She's conveniently forgetting that her comment was what sparked my response in the first place. I'm not going to apologize for defending myself against her academic snobbery. If she can't handle being called out when she acts entitled and condescending, then maybe she should think twice before making comments like that in the future. She clearly thought she could embarrass me in front of the whole family that I would just sit there and take it quietly. Her reaction to being questioned tells me everything I need to know about her character. She can dish it out, but she can't take it. She's used to being the one making cutting remarks about other people, but she falls apart the moment someone turns the tables on her. That's exactly the kind of entitled behavior you'd expect from someone who thinks their university campus makes them better than everyone else. When I was 12, I found an injured raven chick in my backyard after a storm. My parents let me nurse it back to health, and my love for these creatures grew from there. 15 years later, I became something of a local raven whisperer. I had proper permits for wildlife rehabilitation and had been working with the same raven for over some years now. He wasn't technically a pet, since ravens can't legally be kept as pets, but he was a permanently injured bird under my care through the wildlife center I volunteered with. His left wing had been badly damaged, and while he could fly short distances, he couldn't survive in the wild. My backyard was set up perfectly for him with a large flight enclosure, perches, and enrichment activities. He was incredibly smart and had learned to mimic several words and sounds. The neighborhood kids loved watching him, and I often did educational talks at the local elementary school about corvid intelligence. Everything was peaceful until the new family moved in next door 6 months ago. The mother was immediately problematic. She complained about everything from my garden being too wild to my mailbox being the wrong color. But the real issue started when she noticed my raven. Karen approached me one afternoon and told me that my bird was disgusting and probably diseased. She demanded to know why I had a wild animal in my yard. I explained that he was a licensed rehabilitation bird who had been injured and couldn't be released back to the wild. I mentioned that I had all the proper permits. She said angrily that she didn't care what papers I had, and that the bird was a nuisance that probably attracted other pests. Her son, who looked about 14, was constantly trying to antagonize my raven through the fence. He'd throw things at the enclosure and make loud noises. I'd spoken to both him and his mother multiple times about leaving my bird alone. The situation escalated on a Tuesday afternoon. I was cleaning the enclosure when I heard the distinctive sound of a paintball gun. A bright yellow paintball splattered against the metal mesh, just inches from where my raven was perched. I shouted at the kid and asked what he was doing. The kid was standing in his backyard holding a paintball rifle and grinning. He said he was just having some target practice. I told him that he couldn't shoot at my bird because that was animal cruelty and illegal. Karen came walking out of her house and said that her son could play in his own backyard. She suggested that if I didn't want my bird shot at, I shouldn't keep it where it could be seen. I asked if she was seriously telling me it was okay for her son to shoot paintballs at a protected wildlife species. She dismissed my concerns and called my raven just a stupid bird. She said that if he got hit, maybe he would finally fly away. I explained that he was injured and couldn't fly away, and that what she was suggesting was animal abuse. Karen became defensive and told me not to accuse her son of animal abuse. She said he was just playing and that the bird would probably attack someone anyway because those things were vicious. I went inside and called the local animal control officer I worked with. Officer Matt arrived within an hour and thoroughly documented everything. He explained to Karen that threatening or harming a bird under rehabilitation protection could result in federal charges since ravens are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Karen protested that it was ridiculous and that it was just a bird. Officer Matt told her that these were serious federal protections and that he would need to confiscate the paintball gun and file a report. Karen became outraged and said that he couldn't take her son's toy. The officer said that he could and would, and that this was a warning. He made it clear that any further incidents would result in charges. Karen was furious but couldn't do anything when Officer Matt took the paintball gun. She spent the rest of the evening yelling at her son and shooting dirty looks at my house. The next day I was at work when I got a frantic call from my neighbor across the street. She told me urgently that I needed to get home because something had happened to the kid next door. I rushed home to find an ambulance in front of Karen's house and a crowd gathered. The kid had been walking to the corner store when a flock of ravens had descended on him. Not just one or two, but at least a dozen birds. They'd scratched his arms and face pretty badly, and he'd fallen trying to run away, scraping his knee. Ravens are known for their incredible memory and ability to communicate threats to their family groups. Word travels fast in the corvid community, and my raven had apparently told his wild relatives about yesterday's paintball incident. Karen was hysterical and kept asking where I was. She said that she knew I had trained my attack bird to hurt her son. When she saw me, she completely lost it. She pointed at me and shouted that I had done this. She said I had trained that monster to attack her baby. I told her that I was at work and had nothing to do with this. Karen accused me of lying and said that ravens don't just attack people for no reason. Actually, they do when someone threatens one of their own, but I didn't think explaining corvid's social behavior would help the situation. The paramedics were loading the kid into the ambulance. His injuries looked painful but not serious, mostly scratches and scrapes. Karen announced that she was calling the police and accused me of assault with a deadly weapon. Two officers showed up 20 minutes later. Karen immediately launched into her theory about how I'd somehow orchestrated a raven attack on her son. Officer Johnson asked her to clarify if she was telling them that I had trained wild birds to attack her son. Karen confirmed this and explained that I had that bird next door and obviously they communicate or something. Officer Davis asked me if I was home when the incident occurred. I told him no, that I was at my office downtown and offered to show security camera footage and have my co-workers verify I was there all day. I showed them my work badge, scan times, and the security footage from my office building. It was pretty clear I'd been nowhere near home when the attack happened. Officer Johnson told Karen that even if birds could be trained to attack on command, which was highly unlikely, I had a solid alibi. Karen protested that it was too much of a coincidence. Officer Davis said that sometimes coincidences happen and explained that wild animals can be unpredictable. He asked if her son had any interactions with birds recently. The kid who was getting his scratches bandaged looked nervous and admitted that he might have thrown some rocks at birds on his way to school yesterday. Karen was shocked and asked why he never told her that. Officer Johnson explained that this cleared everything up. He told Karen that birds, especially intelligent ones like ravens, have excellent memories. If her son was throwing rocks at them, they probably recognized him as a threat. Officer Matt showed up when the other officers were explaining to Karen that no crime had been committed. He mentioned that he heard there was an incident involving the family he filed a report on yesterday. Officer Johnson confirmed that the kid got scratched up by some ravens and that the mother thought I had somehow orchestrated it. Officer Matt explained that given what happened yesterday with the paintball gun, this sounded like natural results rather than any kind of human interference. Karen asked what paintball gun with obvious confusion. All three officers looked at Karen in surprise. Officer Matt explained that her son was shooting paintballs at a protected bird yesterday and that he had confiscated the weapon and filed a report. Karen demanded to know what her son had done. The kid sheepishly reminded her that he told her he was just playing. Karen realized he had said he was shooting at targets, not telling her the whole truth. Officer Johnson told Karen that it sounded like her son learned a hard lesson about respecting wildlife. He explained that ravens are extremely intelligent and have long memories, and that this appeared to be their way of delivering natural results. The kid spent one night in the hospital for observation due to a mild concussion from his fall, but he was fine. When he came home, I noticed he gave my backyard a very wide berth and never so much as looked in my raven's direction. Karen tried to file complaints with the Homeowners Association, the city, and even the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, but everyone told her the same thing. She had no case. I met my friend back in college when we both worked part-time at the same coffee shop. We clicked right away because we were both dealing with the same struggle of balancing classes and trying to make ends meet. After graduation, we stayed close. We'd grab lunch every other week, text each other random memes, and vent about work whenever things got stressful. It felt like a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. About 6 months ago, things started to shift. My friend had been complaining about their job for a while. The pay was terrible, the hours were unpredictable, and their boss was apparently a nightmare. I sympathized because I've been in similar situations before. Then one evening I got a text asking if we could meet up for coffee. I figured they just needed someone to talk to, so I agreed. When we met, they looked stressed. Dark circles under their eyes, fidgeting with their phone, barely touching their drink. After some small talk, they finally asked if I could lend them $200. Rent was due in a few days and they were short. They promised they'd pay me back when their next paycheck came through. I hesitated for a moment. $200 wasn't pocket change for me either, but I considered this person a close friend. We'd been through a lot together, and I thought that if I were in their position, I'd want someone to help me out. So I agreed. I transferred the money that same evening. My friend thanked me repeatedly and said they really meant it. They promised they'd have the money back to me by the end of the month. I said it was no problem and to let me know if they needed anything else. The end of the month came and went. No mention of the money. I didn't want to be pushy, so I let it slide for a bit. Maybe they were still struggling. Maybe they forgot. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. A month later, I casually brought it up over lunch. I mentioned that I knew things had been tight for them and just wanted to check in about that $200 whenever they got a chance. They apologized and said things had been crazy. They promised they'd get it to me soon. I said there was no rush and just whenever they could. Another month passed. Still nothing. I brought it up again, this time a bit more directly. I said I hated to keep asking, but I could really use that money back since I had some bills piling up too. They said they knew and that they were working on it. They promised they'd get it to me next week. Next week turned into 2 weeks, then 3. Before I knew it, 3 months had gone by and I still hadn't seen a single dollar. I was starting to feel annoyed, but I didn't want to ruin the friendship over money. I kept thinking they were probably just embarrassed and would pay me back eventually. Then last week I got another text. My friend wanted to meet up again. I had a sinking feeling I knew what this was about. Sure enough, after some awkward small talk, they asked if I could lend them another $150. Bills were piling up and they needed help covering utilities. I took a deep breath before responding. I said I really wished I could help, but I wasn't comfortable lending more money until they paid back what they already owed me. I reminded them it had been 3 months now. My friend's expression changed immediately. They looked offended, like I'd just insulted them. They asked me if I was seriously going to bring that up right now. I said I wasn't trying to be harsh, but that I had my own bills to worry about too. $200 was a lot for me as well. I offered to help them look at their budget or figure out other options, but I explained I couldn't give them more cash right now. They said they couldn't believe I was doing this. They brought up everything they'd done for me and said this was how I was treating them. I asked what they meant. They started listing things. They reminded me about when they covered my shift last year and when they helped me move apartments. They said now when they actually needed something, I was just saying no. I felt my frustration building. Those things weren't the same as lending money I never got back. I explained that those were favors between friends. And this was different. I pointed out that I'd lent them money 3 months ago, and they still hadn't paid me back. I said I wasn't trying to be difficult, but that I had boundaries too. They said some friend I was and that they thought they could count on me. They grabbed their jacket and left without saying another word. Was I really being unreasonable? I didn't think so, but their reaction made me second-guess myself. Over the next few days, I barely heard from them. No apology, no explanation, just silence. I started thinking about our friendship and realized something uncomfortable. Almost every time we'd hung out recently, money came up somehow. They'd ask me to cover lunch and promise to pay me back next time. They'd mention how broke they were and hint that they needed help. Looking back, I felt less like a friend and more like a backup ATM. A week later, I saw them post on social media about a concert they'd just bought tickets to. The tickets weren't cheap either. I felt my blood boil. They couldn't pay me back, but they had money for entertainment. That was the final straw. I sent them one last message. I said I'd seen their post and that I was glad they could afford concert tickets. I added that I'd appreciate getting my $200 back whenever they were ready. They read it but never responded. That told me everything I needed to know. Our friendship wasn't really about mutual support. It was about what I could provide when they needed something. I blocked their number and decided I was done chasing money from someone who clearly didn't respect me. A mutual friend reached out to me a few days ago saying they'd heard about what happened. Apparently, my former friend had been complaining to people that I was selfish and abandoned them when they needed help. The mutual friend wanted my side of the story. After I explained everything, they admitted they'd also lent money that never got paid back. Turns out I wasn't the only one. I accepted that I probably won't see that $200 again, but at least I learned who my real friends are. I usually handle the orders from start to finish at the small neighborhood bakery I work at. Last week, a woman came in wanting a birthday cake for her daughter's party. She was very specific about what she wanted. Vanilla cake with buttercream frosting, pink and white design, and rainbow sprinkles on top. Simple enough. She approved the design sketch I showed her and paid the deposit without any issues. I made the cake on Friday, exactly like ordered. I used our premium vanilla bean cake recipe, whipped up fresh buttercream, and carefully applied the pink and white color scheme she'd requested. For the finishing touch, I covered the top with our standard rainbow sprinkles, the same sprinkles we use on every cake, the same ones that dozens of customers have loved. I even took a photo before boxing it up because it looked perfect. She picked up the cake Saturday morning. She examined it through the box window, nodded, paid the remaining balance, and left. I was restocking the display case Sunday afternoon when the door chimed. I looked up and saw the same woman walking in, carrying our cake box. My stomach dropped. Returns are always awkward, but I figured maybe there was a legitimate problem. Maybe we'd gotten the flavor wrong or something. I walked over to the counter and asked if everything was okay with her order. She set the box down hard enough that I heard something shift inside. She told me that no, everything was not okay, and that she needed a full refund. I opened the box to inspect the cake. More than half of it was gone. Someone had cut neat slices from it, leaving just a small portion remaining. The frosting on the remaining piece was slightly smudged, and there were crumbs scattered in the box. I apologized that she wasn't satisfied and asked her to tell me what the problem was. She said the sprinkles weren't colorful enough to create a joyful atmosphere for her child's party. I stared at her. I had to process what she'd just said because it sounded so absurd. I repeated back to her that the sprinkles weren't colorful enough. She confirmed that was what she said. She explained they looked dull and that the party was ruined because the cake didn't provide the festive aesthetic she was expecting. She added that her daughter was devastated. I looked down at the remaining cake. The sprinkles looked exactly like they always did. Bright red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Standard rainbow sprinkles. I told her I used the same sprinkles we use on all our cakes. There are regular rainbow sprinkles. She responded that they weren't good enough and demanded her money back. I explained that I understood she was disappointed, but I couldn't refund the product that had already been consumed. She'd eaten more than half the cake. Her expression changed. Her eyes narrowed and her voice got louder. She asked if I was refusing to give her a refund. I clarified that our policy is that we can't refund food that's been eaten. If there had been something wrong with the cake, like if we'd made it the wrong flavor, or if it had been spoiled, she should have called us before serving it. She demanded to speak to the real manager. I told her I was the manager on duty today. That wasn't technically true. I'm the senior decorator, and I handle the shop when the owner isn't there, but I do have the authority to make decisions about orders. She said no, she meant the actual manager. The real one, not some kid who frosts cakes. I explained that the owner isn't here on Sundays, but even if she were, our refund policy would be the same. We cannot refund food that has been consumed. She pulled out her phone and announced that fine, then she was going to post a scathing review online. She said she was going to tell everyone how terrible this bakery is and how I refuse to provide customer service. She mentioned she has 15,000 followers, and they'll all know to avoid this place. I told her she was welcome to leave an honest review of her experience. She said, oh, it would be honest. She'd make sure everyone knows how unprofessional I am. She was getting louder. The couple browsing our pastries near the window were staring now. I apologized again that she was unsatisfied, but explained that threatening to leave a bad review doesn't change our policy. She ordered a specific cake, we made it exactly like requested, and she served it at her party. If the sprinkles weren't colorful enough, she would have noticed before cutting and serving more than half of it. She called this outrageous. She said she's a paying customer and deserves better treatment than this. I told her I understood she was upset, but there was nothing I could do. The cake was made to her specifications and was clearly acceptable enough to serve to her guests. She grabbed the box and shoved it toward me. Some of the remaining cake smeared against the inside. She said, "I haven't heard the last of this." She walked out, letting the door slam behind her. I stood there for a moment, then looked at the couple by the window. The man gave me a sympathetic smile and said that was something. I agreed and apologized that they had to witness that. His wife told me not to apologize. She pointed out that the woman ate the whole cake and then wanted her money back, calling it ridiculous. They ended up buying 2 loaves of bread and left me a generous tip in the jar. Later that evening, I checked our online reviews. Sure enough, she'd posted a 1-star review claiming we'd ruined her daughter's birthday with subpar decorations and refused to take responsibility. I showed it to the owner the next day. She laughed and told me she'd respond to it publicly with our standard policy and the photo I'd taken of the finished cake. Several regular customers saw it and left their own reviews defending us and calling out the absurdity of demanding a refund for eaten food. The woman never came back. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.